The room descended into utter chaos. The vice president tried to regain control, but quickly gave up when the crowd started chanting "Resign, resign," at Grace's now vacant seat. By the time I stepped outside, someone had already posted the live stream online with the caption, "HOA President melts down after getting exposed for 30 years of trespassing." Within an hour, it had thousands of views and the comment section was on fire. "This is better than Netflix. Someone bring Grace a blood pressure monitor." Tom clapped a hand on my shoulder as we reached the parking lot. His tone was serious now, all humor gone. "You realize what you've done, right? You just went to war with the most well-connected woman in the county. She's not going to let this go." I knew he was right. Grace had influence, money, and a vindictive streak that could give a scorpion second thoughts. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I was done playing defense. "Did she really whisper, 'Your grandfather should have sold'? Let me know in the comments. So would you have kept going? Because what I did next cost me everything I had." The morning of the auction started with a message as clear as it was destructive. I walked outside to find my truck wrecked of 4 flat tires, a windshield cracked like a spiderweb, and a key scratched down the side for good measure. Grace wasn't even pretending anymore. This was sabotage, and it was personal. I called for a ride, but my Uber driver got lost 3 times on roads he'd supposedly lived near for decades. Coincidence? Not likely. By the time I stumbled into the courthouse auction room, I was 45 minutes late, sweat clinging to my only clean shirt, my nerves frayed to the edge. And there she was, Grace, front and center, holding court like royalty. Chanel suit, diamonds glinting, and a Cartier watch flashing under the fluorescence. She looked like she already had the deed in her purse. The auctioneer, an older guy with a handlebar mustache and a voice like Mal's, greeted her with a syrupy "Of course, sweetheart." When she asked about procedures, I nearly gagged. Flanking her were 3 men in dark suits that screamed private security, plus her lawyer, a slick guy who kept whispering in her ear like a Bond villain. The auction started with a few irrelevant lots of vacant properties nobody cared about, but I watched Grace closely, decoding her signals like my life depended on it. When she touched her earring, one of her goons raised a paddle. When she reached for her purse, they stopped. It was orchestrated, choreographed, a power dance disguised as real estate bidding. Finally, Lot 47B came up, the little triangle of land that held the key to everything. Starting bid, $5,000 for parcel 47B, the auctioneer called, barely pretending to be excited. One of Grace's men raised his paddle immediately. $5,000, he announced with robotic precision. I lifted mine. $6,000, I said, forcing my voice not to shake. The next bid came faster. $10,000, shouted Grace's first puppet, with the enthusiasm of someone springing a trap. Then, 15, 25, 35, the numbers climbed like a firestorm, faster than my pulse. At 50,000, the first guy sighed and lowered his paddle with enough drama to earn an Oscar nod. At 75,000, the second one checked his phone like he just received tragic news, shook his head, and bowed out gracefully. That left me, and puppet 3. He was thin, with a face like dried parchment and eyes like broken glass, the kind of guy who looked like he evicted widows for sport. 100,000, he said, his lips curling into a smug little smirk. Grace turned in her seat, flashing a victorious smile that radiated pure malice. She was sure she'd broken me, that I was financially gutted after everything she'd done, wrecking my business, smearing my name, sabotaging my truck. She thought this was her victory lap. The auctioneer raised his gavel like a butcher preparing the final chop. 100,000, going on, see a broken bar, going twice, see a broken bar. And that's when I did something I never thought I'd do. I pulled out my phone and called my mother, right there in the auction room. "Mom," I said, my voice cracking, "I need everything, your whole retirement, right now. Please, just trust me." The room went still. You could have heard a paperclip drop. From my phone came her voice, gentle and confused. "Ryan, what's going on? Are you okay?" Then, without hesitation, "Of course, sweetheart. How much do you need?" Across the room, Grace actually laughed, turning to her lawyer with mock sympathy plastered across her perfectly made-up face. "Oh, how adorable," she cooed, calling mommy to bail him out. Some people just weren't meant to own land. That was it. Something snapped. My mom had worked 40 years as a nurse, every night shift, every double, every sore back adjust to scrape together that retirement. And she gave it up without hesitation, because that's what family does. 150,000, I shouted, my voice trembling but loud enough to rattle the windows. A stunned silence fell like a curtain. Even the auctioneer paused mid-swing. Grace whipped around, so fast her Chanel bag slid off her shoulder. What? No, he's bluffing. That's fraud. He doesn't have that kind of money. I held up my phone, the wire transfer confirmation glowing on the screen. The gavel slammed down. Sold. Lot 47B to bidder number 17 for $150,000. Grace let out a sound somewhere between a shriek and a curse. She hurled her Hermé bag at the podium like it was a live grenade. You think you've won? My lawyers will destroy you. As security escorted her out, her lawyer sauntered up to me like a smug cobra in Gucci loafers. Congratulations, Mr. Mitchell, he said, all teeth. Just a friendly reminder from my client. Ever heard of the Historic Roads Preservation Act of 1890? It's a real gem. Makes you think about who had the roads first, doesn't it? Then he left, whistling, while my stomach twisted into knots. I had just burned through my life savings and my mother's retirement to win a tiny strip of land. And Grace still had another trap ready to spring, because 3 days later, the process server showed up. The lawsuit was the thickness of a college textbook. Plaintiff, Grace Henderson vs. Defendant, Ryan Mitchell. Claim, violation of the Historic Roads Preservation Act. Attached was a map allegedly dated 1890, so pristine it might as well have come off a laser printer yesterday. And right there, in crisp ink, was a public road slicing through my land, right where Grace's driveway had always been. Her lawyer's argument was sharp and simple. Historic public roads are protected under federal law. They can't be blocked, no matter who owns the land now. If this map was real, she could keep using the driveway for relevant, and I might even owe her damages for trying to stop her. I spent the next day calling every attorney in the county. It was a disaster. 3 refused to even speak once I said her name. 1 literally laughed and hung up. The 5th, a baby-faced lawyer who looked like he still had student loans, he glanced at the map, frowned, and packed his bag. If that document holds up, he said, you can't stop her. You may owe her access rights and damages. I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell, no one here will take this case. The blows kept coming. My bank sent notice of my new loan repayment schedule, brutal monthly payments beginning immediately. Lakeshare sent a final notice. My account was permanently banned. And the local news aired a segment, "Man attempts to block historic public road." They made me look like a villain rewriting the town's history. Meanwhile, Grace's social media empire went into overdrive. She posted selfies with the antique map, using hashtags like #preservehistory and #communityfirst. She looked like a saint. And I, a greedy land thief trying to erase local heritage. Then my mother called, crying, asking if she'd just lost everything. I didn't have the heart to answer. Depression set in. I spent hours in the county archives, digging through dusty ledgers and yellowed files, searching for any mention of this so-called road. Nothing, not a single reference. But that map, it looked official enough to fool anyone not paying close attention. Then, just as I was starting to give up, Grace showed up again. Her Mercedes pulled into the driveway like it owned the place. As she'd found a way through Tom's lot, she stepped out, perfectly styled, folder in hand, phone already mounted on her dash, live streaming to 5,000 viewers. "Hi everyone," she chirped, sugary sweet. "I'm here to help our struggling neighbor make a graceful exit." She smiled like a saint on a Hallmark card. "Ryan, I heard about your broken bar financial difficulties." Her voice oozed sympathy like boiled syrup. "I've prepared a generous offer of 50% of market value. Very fair, considering your broken bar legal situation." She held out the folder like she was offering me a lifeline and not a news. The live stream's title, "Helping Our Troubled Neighbor Transition with Compassion." And the comments, "She's so generous. What a kind soul. Hope he takes the deal." Then she reached out, patted my shoulder, and whispered with a smile, "You've got 48 hours. Think about your mom. You don't want her losing everything, do you? Absolutely protected by law. Yeah, it was erased from existence before color TV was even popular. I turned the decree toward the camera, making sure every signature, every embossed seal, every page stamped with official county record was visible. This document, I said, letting the weight of it carry my words, proves that the road Grace has been using and suing me over was permanently discontinued in 1966. No future claims. No exceptions. It's not historic. It's not protected. It's gone. The silence from Grace's feed was deafening, her face twisted in slow motion from fake concern to dawning horror. I stepped to the side so the camera had a clear view of Tom, who held up the brittle newspaper, dated and yellowed with time. And here's the article reporting the flood that destroyed it, Tom added, his voice loud and steady. 17 county roads gone. Grace's old Henderson Trail was number 12. That road? It says dead as her whole credibility. The chat exploded. Wait, what? He has receipts. OMG, someone call the county. I knew she was lying. Grace lunged toward her phone, but I was quicker. One more thing, I said, tapping the screen to flip her camera back to selfie mode. And now both of us in frame. Grace Henderson knowingly trespassed on private land for 30 years, lied to the public, filed a fraudulent lawsuit, and tried to steal someone's home through manipulation and deception. But don't take my word for it. Watch this. I pulled up a short clip I had prepared as satellite footage, deed records, old home meeting transcripts, and of course, the clip of her being escorted from the tax auction screaming, all synced with timestamps, documents, and a neat closing slide that read, "The road may be gone, but justice still finds a way." She yanked the phone from my hand and fumbled to end the stream, but it was too late. Over 20,000 people had watched it live. Within minutes, the clip was being reposted on social media faster than she could delete. Tom handed her the box of evidence like it was a parting gift. "For your lawyer," he said. "You'll need it." Grace stood frozen in her designer silk, her empire of lies crumbling around her. I could almost hear the sound of her influence shattering. I turned and walked away. This time, she didn't follow. She didn't shout. She didn't whisper threats. She just stood there, for once in her life, silent. The next morning, her name trended online for all the wrong reasons. #GraceGate, #HoHellQueen, #Road to Nowhere. Her lawsuit was dropped quietly 2 days later. She resigned from the HOA in disgrace a week after that. And me, I got my land, my name, and my peace back. But more than anything, I got my mother's retirement refunded every penny, with interest. Because justice isn't always swift, but when it hits like a flood. Grace's nod was slow, broken, and final, with the kind of gesture that didn't just say "I give up" but "I've lost everything." I leaned down, picked up her fallen phone, and carefully returned it to her trembling hand. The camera was still rolling, still live to over 10 million viewers now, an audience that had watched her go from villain to viral cautionary tale in under an hour. I looked straight into the lens and spoke clearly, without malice, but with the unshakable weight of truth. Accountability isn't harassment, it's justice. And justice finally caught up. Tom stepped forward, holding up the yellow decree one more time like a final nail in the coffin. "This wasn't just a win for Ryan," he said, voice steady. "This was a win for every neighbor she ever threatened, every fine she ever gave out to control someone, and every family who just wanted to live in peace." Grace's phone began to vibrate uncontrollably, and notifications flooding in faster than the app could load them. Emails, texts, missed calls. A new comment flashed across the screen. "Confirmed, HOA is holding emergency vote to remove Grace Henderson, effective immediately." The next said, "Local news chopper now circling overhead." This is tonight's lead story. I turned away, not out of cruelty, but closure. For the first time in years, the weight that had sat on my shoulders like a concrete anchor lifted. My land was mine, my name was cleared. My mother would sleep peacefully tonight. Grace stayed on the marble floor, her once flawless world reduced to broken makeup, shredded reputation, and a phone full of ruin. She'd gambled everything on Liesa and lost in front of the entire world. As Tom and I walked back through the woods, his voice was light, almost amused. "You think they'll make a documentary out of this?" I smiled. "Only if they want record-breaking views." The final scene was already writing itself. Grace's mansion, quiet now. The live stream ended, the neighborhood free, the story over. Or maybe, just maybe broken bar, just beginning. Want an epilogue about what happened to Grace next? Or how the hoe changed after her fall? Tom scooped up Grace's phone with theatrical flair, held it up to the still active stream, and flashed a mischievous grin. "Thanks for watching, folks. And remember, every Karen meets her match eventually. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe." With a tap, the stream ended. But the damage had already been done. The video had been recorded, screen captured, mirrored, and shared thousands of times before he even hit end. By morning, it would be everywhere: Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Reddit. Grace Henderson's downfall was officially viral. This wasn't just the collapse of a neighborhood tyrant, this was history, broadcast in 4K. The woman who drilled a community with fear, who fined kids for sidewalk chalk, who tried to destroy me and nearly succeeded as she had just self-destructed. Live for the world to see. The woman who once stood on podiums with the arrogance of royalty had confessed, sobbed, and ranted her way into infamy. And the irony? She was the one who hit go live. Want to see the moment her soul left her body? Comment the timestamp where you saw the exact second Grace realized she lost. They're seizing your lake. Vacate now or face arrest. That's the message I woke up to one morning. The HOA president had listed my private fishing lake online for $2 million without my consent. And just like that, my peaceful ranch life got flipped upside down. Grace, the woman behind the chaos, even called the cops on me. 5 patrol cars rolled up on my property while I was showing a couple how to cast a line. She wasn't just after my land, she was trying to destroy my livelihood and financially ruin me. But what Grace didn't know was that she had made one critical error. The only road that led to her luxurious mansion crossed a little strip of land, something she clearly overlooked. And when I realized the truth about it, let's just say her reign of control started to crack. Want to know what happened next? Buckle up, how this revenge story's about to get wild. My name's Ryan. 3 years ago, when I was 32, I inherited a 15-acre ranch from my grandfather. The centerpiece was a stunning 2-acre lake of crystal clear water, teeming with bass practically begging to be caught. But inheriting land also means inheriting all its headaches and maintenance. It's no joke. I had buckets in the living room every time it rained. The roof needed serious work at $10,000 worth, and that was with a friends and family discount from my contractor. That's when I had a bright idea. Why not rent out the lake for fishing? I listed it for $50 a day on an app called LakeShare. It seemed like a win-win to earn a bit, fix the house, maybe even build a cushion for the next emergency. What could possibly go wrong? My first booking was a sweet young couple and their 7-year-old daughter, Emma. She was obsessed with fishing shows and couldn't wait to catch her first fish. She even called me 3 times beforehand, asking which lure colors worked best and if the fish liked peanut butter sandwiches. They booked a full week and paid in advance. For a moment, I thought maybe this little side hustle would actually work. That illusion shattered 8 hours later. I got an email that made my stomach drop. The subject line was in all caps, angry red font, cease and desist, illegal commercial activity. It was from Grace Henderson, president of the Willowbrook HOA. The email read like a legal drama, 3 pages of rules, regulations, and consequences. Thing is, I had accidentally enrolled in the HOA 2 years ago when I was setting up my internet. Once I realized my property was a full half-mile outside their jurisdiction, I canceled. But Grace clearly never forgot. Apparently, even that brief, mistaken membership was enough to land me on her permanent blacklist. I responded calmly, attaching a satellite image clearly showing my land was outside the HOA's reach. I thought that would settle things. I was wrong. That night at 11 p.m. to be exact, Grace called my guests directly. Not a message, not an email, but a late-night phone call to complete strangers. The next morning, Emma's mother called me. Her voice was trembling. "I'm so sorry, but we have to cancel our stay. The HOA president said there might be legal issues. We just can't take that risk with Emma." She told me Grace had said I was running an illegal operation, and that federal agents might get involved. I could hear little Emma crying in the background, asking if I was a bad man who was going to jail. That broke something in me, but Grace wasn't finished. When I opened social media, I saw my house splashed all over her profile, zoomed-in photos taken with what must have been a telephoto lens. The caption read, "Illegal business endangering children, shared to protect our community." Within 6 hours, 347 reactions, 89 shares. And the comments? Brutal. People were calling me a predator, saying I was luring kids into the woods, demanding police involvement. One person even accused me of running a drug ring. Phone calls poured in, cancellations one after another. In just 1 hour, I lost $400 in deposits. Why would the HOA president call my guests personally, and at that hour, drop a comment if you've ever had a neighbor that obsessed? Because what came next proved she'd been scheming for years. The next morning began with sirens of the kind that make your heart leap before your mind catches up. Not one, not two, but 3 squad cars and a K9 unit rolled up my gravel driveway. I was by the lake, showing a retired couple how to tie fishing knots. Then Grace came storming out from behind the police vehicles like it was some twisted reality show. "That's him. It's a terrorist training camp. He's teaching them combat technique. We should check the lake for weapons," she shrieked like she was auditioning for a horror movie. One of the officers, Deputy Rodriguez, walked up slowly, hand resting on his holster. "We've received multiple reports of suspicious activity. I'm going to need you to step away from the rods, sir." He scanned the scene. 2 seniors in floppy sun hats, quietly holding fishing poles. The couple, Harold and Margaret from Tampa, looked petrified. Margaret clutched her tackle box like it was a security blanket. Harold tried to explain they just booked a day on the app and wanted some fresh bass for dinner. Grace didn't back down. She shoved past the deputy, her designer heels sinking into the mud, ranting about homeland security and child safety. "I am the HOA president. Arrest him. Check the lake. Yeah, he's probably hiding bodies." Deputy Rodriguez raised his hand, clearly reaching the end of his patience. "Ma'am, this is your 5th false report today. We've warned you of fishing isn't terrorism. These folks are just trying to enjoy retirement." Grace's face turned a color I can't even name. "My husband golfs with the mayor. I'll have your badge." Deputy Rodriguez let out a deep, exhausted sigh, the kind that comes from dealing with one too many unhinged HOA presidents. "Ma'am," he said flatly, "if you file one more false report, we're charging you with misuse of emergency services. These folks are just fishing." Then he turned to me. "Sir, I apologize for the disruption. You're clearly not breaking any laws, but honestly, you might want to think about getting a restraining order." After the officers pulled away and the rattled couple left without even asking for a refund, my neighbor Tom wandered over from across the property line. Tom, 70 years old, had lived in the area for 4 decades and knew everything that happened within 20 miles. He'd watched the entire circus from his porch, binoculars in one hand, beer in the other. Standing there in my driveway, Tom whipped out his ancient laptop. The thing took 5 full minutes to power up, groaning like it was dying. "You wanna know why Grace is going after you like a dog on a bone?" he asked. "Let me show you something that'll blow your mind." He opened a folder titled County Drama. Yes, that was actually the NAMIA, and pulled up an old newspaper article from 2 decades ago. The headline read, "Local woman's $1 million plea rejected." "See this?" Tom pointed. "Grace's father died and left her $5 million. But there was a catch: she had to buy back her family's ancestral land within 10 years. I felt my stomach sink. "No, why a broken bar?" Tom nodded, clearly enjoying the moment. "Yep, that land? It's this ranch. Your grandfather's ranch. Her great-great-grandfather sold it during the Great Depression dirt cheap. Her family's been trying to reclaim it ever since. Old man Henderson spent his life trying to buy it back. When he died, he passed the mission to Grace." Tom flipped to another article. A grainy, black and white photo showed a much younger Grace, same strict haircut, kneeling in my driveway. "She offered your grandpa $3 million cash, got down on her knees, crying, begging, said it was her father's dying wish." "What did he say?" I asked. Tom smirked. "He told her the land was staying in the Mitchell family forever, said no amount of money would change that." Suddenly, everything clicked into place. This wasn't about rules or safety or zoning laws. This was about a 20-year-old grudge, rotting and festering into obsession. But how does ruining my fishing business help her buy the ranch? I asked. Tom closed his laptop and gestured toward Grace's estate with his beer. Think it through. If you can't pay for upkeep, can't manage the taxes, can't generate income, you'll be forced to sell. And guess who'll be first in line? Cash in hand? My phone buzzed again, another notification from Lakeshare. My account had been suspended due to multiple safety complaints. Before I could even read the full message, 3 more reservations vanished. People I'd never even spoken to in town started avoiding eye contact. At the grocery store, I overheard whispers about weapons and terrorism. The cashier I'd known for years suddenly insisted on checking my ID for a box of nails. Grace's smear campaign was working. I was being buried in lies, and I couldn't stop the avalanche. In total, I lost $400 in deposits, another $600 in upcoming bookings. I snapped. I punched the garage wall so hard I dented it and maybe fractured something in my hand. How does one person hold this much power? I muttered. How can lies spread faster than truth? Tom, quiet for a moment, finally said, you ever notice something odd about Grace's house? I looked up, still nursing my hand. What about it? He gave me a sly grin of the kind that usually comes before something dramatic. She's lived in that mansion for 10 years. Big place, 3-car garage, circular driveway, but she's never once used her own driveway. Always parks that $100,000 Tesla at my place and walks over. That stopped me cold. Wait. Why? Tom grinned wider. Exactly. Let's find out. He fired up his antique laptop again, but this time opened a mapping site. The satellite view loaded slower than molasses, pixel by pixel like a jigsaw puzzle from 1997. But when the full image finally appeared, my world flipped upside down. Look closely, Tom said. There's her mansion. There's her driveway leading to the main road. He traced the yellow highlighted property lines with his finger. Now, look here. I leaned in, and there it was, clear as day. Her entire driveway from the garage all the way to the county road cut straight through my land. Is this real? I asked. Tom nodded. Every inch of it. Her private road? It's been sitting on your property for the past 30 years. Boot to broken bar. She must have an easement, right? A legal right to use it? Tom chuckled like a man who'd just reeled in a prize fish. Nope. I used to work for the county. Still got friends who owe me favors. There's no easement, no access agreement, no historical use permit. She's been trespassing every single day. My brain was spinning. It was too perfect, too poetic, but also real. Why didn't my grandfather ever say anything? Tom opened another file. Historic property records going back to the 50s. Your grandpa, he was a kind man. Figured as long as she wasn't bothering him directly, he'd let it slide. Live and let live. That was his motto. But legally, she's got no right to touch that road. He pointed to a small, wedge-shaped patch of land at the bottom of Grace's driveway. That little triangle where her road meets the county line? That's a separate parcel. Lot 47B controls all legal access to her property. I stared at it, stunned. Who owns it? Tom's tone changed, like a gambler holding the winning card. Technically, no one. The owner died 3 years ago. Their kids live in Japan and never paid the taxes. That lot is going up for auction in 10 days. Starting bid, $5,000. He let that settle in. Whoever buys that land controls her access to her $8 million mansion. It finally made sense why Tom was helping. He had his own battle with Grace. Last year, he muttered, she fined me $500 because my trash bin was the wrong shade of beige. Said it was supposed to be a desert sand, not a khaki tan. Same damn color. I raised an eyebrow. That's not all. She reported me for my oak tree. Said it blocked her mountain view. That tree's older than she is. Got me citations for months. During the commotion, Tom reached into his wallet and pulled out a weathered business card that looked like it had been there since the Clinton administration. This is Mike. He works at the county recorder's office. Tell him I sent you. He'll back up every word I just said. Every detail. My hands were trembling slightly. Adrenaline still coursing through me as I took the card. Tom, are you sure about this? If I go through with buying that land? Tom leaned in and delivered what I would come to know as his signature line. his voice calm and certain. Every Karen meets her match. Boy, sometimes they just need a little help finding it. For the next 3 days, I went full detective mode. I installed trail cameras along the edge of my land, completely legal, and started collecting evidence. What I captured couldn't have been clearer. Every morning at 7:15 and every evening at 5:30, Grace's shiny Bentley rolled right across my property, like clockwork. I even got footage of her vanity license plate, Queen Bee. Honestly, that felt a little too perfect. Then I headed down to the county recorder's office. Mike, Tom's buddy, didn't just confirm everything. We found official documentation proving it. No easements, no access rights, no historical usage claims, nothing on file. Grace had been trespassing for 30 years, relying on our family's goodwill to keep the peace. But just as I was starting to feel the upper hand, Mike said something that chilled me to the bone. "You're the second person this week to ask about Lot 47B. Some lady came in Tuesday, dressed like she was headed to a fundraiser, asked all kinds of questions about the tax auction, said she was interested in preserving a neighborhood integrity." My stomach dropped. Grace knew, somehow, she had found out, she had discovered the weak spot and was preparing to strike first. That night, Tom and I huddled at his old kitchen table, the surface cluttered with half-used notebooks and mismatched coffee mugs. We were like two generals planning a campaign. "She knows about the auction," I told him. "She's going to bid." Tom stirred his coffee, the spoon clinking softly. "Of course she knows. A woman like her probably has alerts set for any property within walking distance. But here's the thing, she thinks you're broke, thinks you blew your cash fixing the roof and you've got nothing left after she tanked your income." He wasn't wrong. Grace had done her best to strip me of every financial leg I had to stand on. But what she didn't know, I'd been saving for years, living lean, skipping luxuries, preparing for the next big hit. I had $40,000 tucked away in a savings account, untouched and untraceable. Spending it would hurt, but some things matter more than money. Things like defending your family name, your land, and broken bar justice. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what Grace had planned. She never played fair, and sure enough, her next move was straight out of the manipulation playbook. That Friday, she scheduled an emergency home meeting at 7 p.m. sharp, held at the community center. When I arrived technically as Tom's guest, since my property wasn't within the hose reach of the parking lot was so full, you'd think Taylor Swift was playing inside. Grace had sent out personal invitations to every single homeowner in the neighborhood, over 200 of them, with a subject line meant to stir up panic, urgent, protecting our children from a nearby threat. No one batted an eye when I walked in with Tom. They were too focused on the massive projection screen at the front of the room. It looked like she was preparing to host a TED Talk on hysteria. Grace stood confidently in a sharp suit that probably cost more than my entire fishing boat. She clicked through her laptop, testing the slides. The title screen hit like a slap in the face. "The Danger Next Door, a Comprehensive Threat Assessment." 47 slides. She had created 47 slides. About me, graphs, charts, red arrows pointing directly at my property. It was absurd. She opened her presentation with completely fabricated crime statistics. Studies show that 90% of child-related crimes begin with small, unlicensed businesses operating out of residential areas. She declared, like a courtroom prosecutor, there were no studies cited, no actual sources, but still, heads around the room bobbed in agreement like dashboard bobbleheads. Then came the video. It was so over the top, it could have won an award for best dramatic editing. She had somehow obtained gas station security footage of me buying candy bars, slowed it down, and added ominous background music. "This man purchases items clearly intended to lure children," she narrated, her voice dripping with false concern. "Notice how he pays in cash to avoid leaving a digital trail." The video then cut to clips of me near a local playground. Really, it was just dash cam footage of me driving past on my way to Tona, the only route available, but Grace had zoomed in, applied a red tint, and made it look like I was stalking the place. People gasped. One woman muttered something about contacting the FBI. A woman from the back stood up and claimed I had looked at her kids at the grocery store. Never mind the fact that I had no idea who she even was. Then came the tears. Right on cue, Grace stabbed her eyes with an expensive-looking lace handkerchief. Not a drop fell, but the performance was flawless. "I can't sleep at night," she whispered dramatically, "knowing our babies are in danger. A broken bar with a predator living right next door." And then came the real kicker. "That's why I'm proposing an emergency measure," she continued, voice rising with practiced passion. "A $1,000 per day fine for any unlicensed business operating within 1 mile of the HOA and immediate criminal referrals to local law enforcement." Cue the applause. I recognized 3 women from her book club and 2 men from the local country club. They clapped on cue like trained performers. The rest of the room joined in, swept up by the hysteria she had engineered to perfection. One man even shouted, "We should call the FBI, get Homeland Security. This has to be some trafficking operation." The frenzy was at a boiling point. The tension in the room was electric, building to a fever pitch. Grace's smug little smile was growing behind her crocodile tears as she knew a vote was coming, and she was sure she had already won. That's when I stood up. It was like someone hit the mute button on reality. Every head turned in sync as I made my way to the front, laptop tucked under my arm. My footsteps loud in the stunned silence. Grace's expression twitchy, her grin faltered, and her eyes narrowed like a cat sizing up a threat. "What do you think you're doing?" she spat. "You're not even in this hoe. Someone get security." But I was already plugging my laptop into the projector. "Before you vote on paranoia and propaganda," I said, keeping my voice even though my pulse was thundering, "let's take a look at some facts. Like how Miss Henderson here has been driving across my land every day for 30 years so without asking, paying, or even acknowledging it." I pulled up the satellite image and zoomed in. Bright yellow property lines lit up the screen like a legal highlighter, clearly marking her entire driveway as cutting through my land. A stunned silence followed the broken bar, then, pandemonium. "Is that real? She's been trespassing all this time?" The questions came from every corner of the room like rapid fire. Someone near the back had already gone live, their phone raised high, catching the unfolding drama for an audience probably bigger than any home meeting had ever seen. Then Tom stood up. It was finally his moment, the moment he'd been waiting for after years of her petty tyranny. "Since we're airing dirty laundry," he said, loud enough to reach the back row, "she fined me $800 because my mailbox was beige instead of cream." Beige. I had to hire a color expert to prove they were the same damn shade. That was the spark. The dam burst. She threatened to sue me over my garden gnomes. Someone shouted, "I got a $900 fine for leaving my boat in my driveway for 2 hours." She measured my grass with a ruler, said it was half an inch too tall. The room exploded into chaos. Grace's face shifted colors like a malfunctioning mood ring, a purple, white, red. Then she snapped. She lunged for the mic, creating a burst of ear-piercing feedback that made everyone wince. "This is character assassination. It's a witch hunt. I'll sue every single one of you." She actually hurled the microphone at the screen still showing the map of her trespassing and then kicked a folding chair on her way out. A full-on tantrum meltdown. As she stormed past me, she leaned in so close I caught a whiff of her perfume, something expensive, suffocating, and soaked in entitlement. Her voice was a hiss, low and bitter. "Your grandfather should have sold when he had the chance. He's not here to shield you anymore. And you, a broken bar, you won't last half as long."